Guys, this is Sam. I'm going to point to you, but you're probably somewhere completely different on your screen.
No, that's right, on my screen.
So we've got Sam, and down there on my screen, we've got Ross. So we've got Sam's a designer who I used to work with for not very long. I think I was leaving sort of when you were coming into P&W. But Sam works as a graphic designer, and she's also recently set up her own venture called TernHeads. But I'll leave her to introduce herself because she'll do that better and tell you all about herself. And Ross down there is, well, wherever he is.
I was just turning up to talk to my mum, and I seem to.
Yes. Ross is a designer for the Met Office. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Met
Great.
Office is all to do with weather and climate. Just so that you know.
Good stuff. So, I'll let them talk about themselves and give you a little insight into what they do and how they got to be where they are and where they're going next, maybe. I don't know. But hopefully what we talk about here or what these guys are going to talk about is going to be of value for you as graduates looking to get into the design industry. And I'm sure they'll have a few pearls of wisdom to share with you. So I'm going to pass the floor over to Ross and Sam.
So I'm Ross Middleham. I work as content and social lead at the Met Office. You might think that's the police, actually. A lot of people think it is the police. I thought it was the police, actually, even until my first day. And I turned up and realised it was actually weather and climate information. And so my role is to make sure that we communicate the weather and climate to as many people as possible. So we've got a remit, because we're part of government, to make sure that people are kept safe and informed as to what's coming up. So particularly important when there's severe weather. My job there in particular is to make sure, so I help to oversee design and video and content production in general, and then make sure that what's going out on our social channels is awesome. So we are absolutely obsessed by social media. A lot of our stuff is informed by how people are soaking up information at the second. I won't talk too much about myself. I'm keen to hear what you want to know, but I'll let Sam introduce herself and we can kind of go from there. Maybe that's a good way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my name's Sam. I'm a branding and packaging designer at Pemberton and Whiteford in London. We're based in Baker Street, right next to Baker Street Station. And we basically do a lot of kind of work from designing a logo for a company through to doing obviously their packaging, but then that also just expands into anything they kind of want. So we do everything from point of sale, we do kind of images for web banners, and we've also kind of dabbled in some digital screens, big event stands and things like that as well. So our kind of agency scope has kind of widened over the years, as a lot of other agencies have, but our kind of specialisation, if you like, is packaging design. So our main clients are Tesco's. P&W actually kind of created the Tesco Finest brand and have been kind of guardians of that for, like 20 odd years now, I think it is. We do a lot of work for Ferrero and all their brands. So they own like Tic Tac, Nutella, Kinder Surprise, obviously Ferrero Rocher, things like that. And then we do a lot of kind of overseas stuff. We work for a sugar company in Russia. We've done stuff in Japan as well for a supermarket over there, and also in America. So we kind of, dot around really. But it's interesting, and it's kind of a cultural learning curve as well when you work internationally. So that's about it. Myself and Ross, we do a lot of interviews as part of our roles in our jobs. I would say, I think, just being enthusiastic about your work, you can kind of tell when someone's talking through their work, whether they are actually enjoy it and like are kind of invested in what they've done, and that kind of personality sort of comes across, and you know, showing your ideas, that journey that you've been on through a project is really important, because at the end of the day, like, yes, a lot of people can kind of make pretty looking things and use software really well, but I think ultimately when an interviewer is talking to you, they're not just looking at what you can do in terms of putting a project together, they're also thinking, will this person fit into our studio and work well with the team that we already have? So we know that, you know, you're not going to know everything. We know you're a student and you're still learning, and to be honest, you never stop learning, doesn't matter how much experience you've got, and we learn a lot off of you. So I would say just, yeah, enthusiasm and drive and kind of getting that passion to come through, really, I think is quite important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. All those things that you said. I think I've sat in front of many a person that I've interviewed who looked like they really didn't want to be there, to be honest. And that might be down to nerves. And if it is, then we accept that the person in front of us is nervous. We're nervous as well, to be honest. The idea is that I'm trying to get the best out of you. So really, I'm just keen to hear you talk about what you've done passionately. Hundreds and hundreds of people can be art workers, are really good art workers, and can create things that look amazing. But really, I'm interested in why you've decided to make that thing and why that thing means something to you. And definitely showing your workings is so important. We do a lot of portfolio crits with universities around here, and they just show us the finished piece. And to be honest, that leaves you cold, because you kind of want to know, I might not like that. That's really subjective. So I might like that finished piece or I might not. But the important thing is I want to know how they've got to that piece, because that might spark other ideas or at least show me how they're thinking. I think they're the important things, actually. I think it's probably fair to say that we have interviewed a lot of people that just don't seem to know much about us either. And they just don't seem to have done any kind of preparation. And I think they're really, really important things. It shows when you get to interview. And it also makes you feel better when you are being interviewed. You've got stuff already that you want to say.
Yeah, I think it's also as well like kind of tailoring your portfolio as well. So for instance, I've had a lot of people come in who show me their portfolio and they've just done a project and they've just done a poster and nothing else. They haven't like expanded it into anything, or they've done a logo, which is a nice logo, but you want to see it in context. It's like, okay, well, what would that look like on a branded top that staff are going to wear? What's it going to look like on a billboard or a social media post, or, you know, just kind of showing how, I think they call it brand world or something now, just showing where the story goes, you know, and again that helps kind of tell the story of why you've done what you've done.
Yeah, to me as well, some of the most memorable interviews that I've had are people that have showed me their designs in situ. So they've not just shown me it on a nice shiny MacBook, they've pulled out their phone or they've pulled out a tablet of some kind and gone, this is actually what it looks like. Look, here's my phone. I've mocked up a little prototype using a quick app, and this is how it might play through if you start playing with it. And it's seeing those designs in the place that they're intended for makes a huge difference, because we look at so many portfolios where people have created things that will look great the size of a house, but you wouldn't be able to read if it was on a mobile phone. And most people are seeing designs through mobiles, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it also, again, as an interviewer, in your head, you're thinking, where would this person, what client that we have, would they be suited for? When I'm looking through a portfolio and I see a piece of point of sale that they've done off the back of again another branding project or something, it's like, oh, that would work really well for the Ferrero team. Like I could put them on a Ferrero project because they obviously enjoyed doing this project. So I think they'd be quite an asset to go and help, you know, James and Amy on Ferrero. You know, it's just that if you can start placing that person in your team straight away, you are automatically more, you stand out and you're more memorable.
In terms of skills, I think for me, because I'm in-house, what we're looking for is probably quite different to Sam. So it's quite nice that you get two different points of view here. But for me, we're not looking for specialists a lot of the time. We're looking for people that are all-rounded, all-rounders. That we call ourselves content producers, because one minute we need you to be able to create a social media post that's going to go out the door within 20 minutes. The next minute you might be filming a Facebook Live, so you might need to be able to jump on use a camera, do some sound, edit something in After Effects and Final Cut or something like that. And we need you to be able to do all of those different things. So someone that's kind of willing to just get stuck in, to be honest, and not moan about what they're doing, just to approach stuff with enthusiasm is really key, and be flexible with their skills, I think. And I guess you look for some of those skills, Sam, but I'm guessing you're also quite specific because you're doing certain tasks, aren't you, around your product design?
Yeah, I mean, for us, day to day, we use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. They're probably like our core software packages. So for us, it is quite important that you have a pretty good understanding of those. But that doesn't necessarily mean to say that you can't, we love it when people would start drawing things, and you can scan that in and we can show you how to draw that in Illustrator. That's stuff like that is easily taught. It's definitely more the idea generation, just showing that you can come up with an idea and make something on paper a visual thing.
For us, particularly down in the southwest as well, we are really short on people who can animate. So if you've got any kind of animation skills, particularly when you're thinking about producing stuff for social media, it doesn't have to be the most slick thing in the world, but if you can make something move from one side of the screen to another, some text transition in some way, it's going to bring that social media post to life and help you communicate that important message. So people with those skills are few and far between down here. I'm not sure what it's like up in your area, but I would highly recommend having some motion graphics in your portfolio. So I think it's definitely worth considering in-house. That's probably my message that I often bang the drum on, because I come from that kind of background. And often people overlook it or think it's going to be a really boring existence working on the same thing. My experience is it's totally the opposite of that, actually. It's really good working in-house, and you get a lot of flexibility to be able to really shape the way you're doing things. So have a look in-house and think about government as well, particularly in these times. It's an interesting and quite a secure place to have employment at the second, so we're quite lucky in that respect. But having all of those range of skills is going to set you in really good stead. I'll let you say something, Sam, in case I take what you might be about to say, and then I'll say in a minute if you haven't said it.
Yeah, I would say if you've got a mixed skill set like that, or you're not quite sure which way you will kind of want to go in terms of specialising, I would suggest just try and get work placements, or kind of, even if it's just going in shadowing, not necessarily doing any work there, just have a look around and see what companies you can find that maybe, if you can't find somewhere that does all of those things, maybe just concentrate on, the audio side and see if you can get a placement there, and then try somewhere a bit more graphics based and try there, and just go and get your own experience and your own feel of those kind of companies and industries, and see where you start to kind of fit and where you might want to work.
People have been designing for social for years, but I think that need and the crossover of skills, boundaries and roles is happening more and more and more. So in my opinion, and this is again where I'll vary from Sam, probably because of my background, I see that roles are blurring. A designer no longer just designs a leaflet. A designer needs to be able to do all of those different things. So what you're describing, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 years ago called a social media manager. Well, those social media managers no longer just oversee an account. Social media managers will often be hands-on, creating stuff, sorting the publishing schedule, having an eye on stuff that's happening in the real world. They'll be looking at audio, thinking about how they can do stuff for the future. All of those skills are combining, and it's just different terms for job roles, I guess. So I think maybe rather than looking for those audio jobs or for those designer jobs, widen your search criteria.
None of us are going to have an infinite list of places to apply to, or departments within companies and stuff like that, because we don't necessarily have any more access to that stuff than you guys do, really. But it's about finding what you want to do, who you want to work for, why you want to do it, what it is that you're looking to do long term, and then researching from there, finding people on LinkedIn, going on Twitter, following companies on Twitter, or it might be Instagram or whatever. Any of these platforms that you can follow them, and then try and find out someone to get yourself in front of from there.
I think Instagram as well. Instagram's become quite a big thing for the creative industry in general. But speaking to other students and stuff, they're saying that them and their lecturers actually, they follow agencies on Instagram, because some agencies don't pay to advertise. They'll just, if they've got a position, they'll just chuck it out there on their own social media. So, if you have a look into some agencies that you like their work or whatever, and then just follow them on social media.
I mean, personally, every job that I've ever had in the industry has been, they've not been advertised.
No.
I've either asked, phoned up, emailed, and a lot of agencies don't advertise because they don't need to, because people will find them and ask them.
I also wouldn't rely on just looking into job ads as well, because like P&W, we never ever, I don't think we've ever advertised a junior role. We are much more of the mindset that we get placements in because we like to do that, and it keeps us on our toes as a team. People coming in straight from college aren't, you do get a bit blinkered at times in the industry where you've been there for so long, and you do feel a little bit tired and disconnected sometimes. And when you have students coming in who are like, oh, well, let's do this, and you might think, well, that's crazy, but it's really cool because it's different and no one else would have thought of that.
A lot of it is about fitting in and the people that you work with, and I think you're right, Sam. You come in and there's so many different people with different abilities and different backgrounds and different approaches that it keeps things fresh. I think sometimes when you advertise, you only attract a certain type of person. Whereas if someone sought you out and tried to apply for a position and kind of begged for a bit of work placement or whatever, it shows that they're hungry and that they're resourceful because they've looked something out, and they've sought you out by doing a bit of research as well.
Yeah,
so
I'd say at least 80%.
This is more than a job.
At least 80% of the people who work at P&W have been hired off of the back of a work placement. Like we didn't know we needed them in our team until they came in and did a placement, and then they made such a good impression, and they were like, we want this person to stay. Yeah. And even like me personally, I did 3 placements. Well, I did more than 3 placements, but at 3 different companies when I was in my second year, my third year, and then after I graduated. And each placement took me on to my next placement. And when I did the placement at Ziggurat, it was actually a freelancer who was working there at the time. Freelancers are your friend, by the way, when you do work placements, because they dot around to lots of different agencies in a short space of time. So they've got their ear to the ground. They know who's looking and who's not. So always make friends with the freelancers because they will say, oh, you should try such and such because they're looking for a placement, or their placement's leaving next week, or they're looking for a junior. And that's how I got my first job, through a recommendation onto P&W from a freelancer. I would say avoid Mondays, because Mondays is usually the busiest day in the studio, because that's when you get together in the morning, you go through the schedule for that week, everyone's going through catching up with their emails and kind of, getting to the starting up that week. So I would email or phone midweek. If you don't hear anything back, just send another follow-up saying, oh, hi, I emailed you 3 weeks ago. Just wondered if you could give me some feedback on my portfolio, if you've got any jobs available. If not, could you give me some feedback? Because a lot of the time, as Phil says, you get that email at the moment when you're really busy and you fully intend to reply, you just forget. And it's not a snub or anything like that. Or they might have just added you to the placement list of interest, you know. So yeah, just give a little nudge, like 3-4 weeks later or something, and see if you get a response the second time.
But just wherever possible, try and find a person to send it to rather than a generic just email, dear sir, madam, because again, it gives the impression that you haven't really taken the time. So sometimes as a receiver of emails or applications or whatever they might be, if it's just like dear sir, madam, I'm thinking, well, it looks like they've just copy and pasted this email to every single agency and haven't even gone to the lengths of doing that, but then finding a specific name to put to it. So it's things like that, again, that can kind of, when I was talking about that competition element, there'll be certain people that have done that people will just go, I'm not interested, because they just want a job. They're not bothered about having a job with us particularly, because they've not mentioned anything that we've done. They've not referenced, the sort of area that we work in. They've not taken the time to find a specific person to email. And you think, well, all those things are kind of contributing to somebody who is just out there to get money for doing a job. And often what people want, and what Sam would be looking for, is people that to invest in. I think always hold something back, I would say, as well.
Yeah, only put your best
don't
stuff.
show all your cards.
Yeah.
While you're sat at the table, kind of keep some things back to kind of, to keep it fresh in the interview. If you just go and regurgitate what you've sent through already, I think that can also be a bit of a turn off for employers as well. So I think in terms of portfolio, I think was it you, Ross, that had said about the process and showing what's behind the what's on behind the work. This is very appropriate because Robin and I yesterday had quite a lengthy discussion on that very subject, and I think what Ross has said earlier, and I think Sam had mentioned it as well, about like having something context, having something that's beyond just here's a poster. Because if you're just looking at I used the analogy yesterday, here's one for you, Ross. We were talking about the execution of a project, and I was saying, well, the final thing is just the head in the basket. I was taking it literally as an execution. But what you want to know is, why did the head end up in the basket, and how did it, what did they do to be on that block? Was it on a block or in agility? You want the details. The thing itself, the result at the end, isn't as important in some ways as how you got there and the context of how it exists. And I know that that's my own personal view on this. Like I said, we were talking about it yesterday, Robin was asking that question. Is the realisation project you're working on at the moment, is it just, are we looking for the process? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if we're looking for the process or not. I am, personally. I can't speak for other members of staff, but I'm looking for a process because the process is the reason why you've done the outcome. So if you've just given me the outcome, I don't know the context, and I can't make a judgment about it. It's just wallpaper. It's just there. It's something pretty to look at. I like to see ideas. I like to see mistakes. I like to see how you got there. I'm not one to see something that looks perfect, because I know the world's not perfect, and I know that 99% of any project fails because it's the failures that make the success. So I personally want to see the mistakes. I want to see like how things, how you got there, the journey you took, how you think, because that's what I'm basically, when I was in Sam's role, I'm buying that person's brain and thought processes and the way they are, who they are, and how to work with them. I'm not buying how many stars on their CV of Illustrator they are, because that doesn't mean anything. I want to know can they solve a problem? Can they think? Are they afraid to make a mistake? Are they adventurous enough to take a risk and make a mistake and admit that they failed, but then try and find a solution to unfail? Personally, that's what I look for in portfolios. But whatever you guys think, if you agree with that, I mean, do you guys agree from being in industry and putting a portfolio together yourself and going to interviews and the like? Would you say that's a fair point?
It's absolutely the unique thing about you. You can see thousands of finished slick pieces and they don't mean anything, they're empty. You need to know how you've prepped that and how you think. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. But the amount of people that don't do that is astounding, and the ones that stand out are the ones that do that.
I think that sort of brings me on to the point that we had a talk like this, well, not like this, but a couple of years ago we had a designer come in, and he said, like, you've got to look at the numbers of graduates coming out of in this country for graphic design, and he said, there might be 400,000 people, and they're all going for, say, 100 jobs. So you've got all those people, you've got 4,000 people going for each job. He said, but ultimately that sounds like a lot. It sounds like you're in massive competition. It's a really competitive market, and it is. But he said that you've got to consider that 50% of those people are going to turn up late or not turn up at all. So that's 2,000 people going for a job instantly. And then out of that 2,000 people, there's going to be someone who will not conduct themselves properly. So they'll fall by the wayside. And then you'll have people that will be all right, they conduct themselves all right, but the work isn't quite right, or they don't know anything about the company. So then that knocks a few off. And each time, each thing that you don't pay attention to reduces the competition for that job. And so what I try and do, and what I've always tried to do, is get you guys and people that I teach to be different by being able to think. That's why I bang on about ideas all the time. What's the purpose? Why are you doing it? What process are you following? What's the idea behind it? Because that's what people want to see. They want to see that you can think differently. Like Ross said, if everyone's turning up and they've all got a D&AD competition piece, and it's a poster, and everyone's got a variation of the same thing, they're all by the by. It's just like, yeah, another student. It's about standing out and being noticed, and you don't have to be completely whacking off the wall to do that. You just need to do a lot of simple things really well.
I mean, personally, in branding and packaging, it's nice when portfolios are, you open them up and you've maybe got a couple of sentences which outline the brief, and then you've got the hero image of what you've made, but then always bring your sketchbooks just tucked inside your portfolio or something that you can pull out if people want to see them, because not everybody does. Like some agencies just want to see the slick portfolio finished thing, but I guarantee like 90% will be interested in your workings as well, and you've got them there.
I don't think I'd want to work for an agency that just want to see the final thing. Personally, I just think, well, I don't want to work for someone who just is bothered about the shiny stuff and the pretty stuff.
Yeah,
I want someone who's going to be interested in the stuff that's under the bonnet. The kind of what makes you tick as a person, because it shows that they're more interested in you rather than what you can do.
Yeah. At the end of the day, design is about problem solving, and finding problems to solve in the first place. So, you have to be able to explain why you've done what you've done. Why does that answer the brief? Why is that the better idea?
It's weird because when I realised that, it made me feel quite uncomfortable to start with, because it made me feel like I was analytical and maybe slightly nerdy, that I was considering myself as a detective or a problem solver or something like that. But when I realised that, because it kind of it feels like it's jarring against being creative and kind of bracing the chaos, but it's absolutely key to everything that we do.
Yeah.
That's it. The creative bit is solving the problem, isn't it? That's the creative bit, and that's the I've often told these guys over the years that the bit that I love most is the the pain of sitting there and drawing out ideas and not getting things and coming up against stumbling blocks and things that almost work but don't, and the agony and pure like frustration of sitting there trying to solve the design problem. That's the bit that I absolutely love. It makes me a little perverse in that respect, in that like I love the problems, I love the challenge, and that's why I got into design. That's the thing I love most about design. The final execution can be a million and one different ways. It depends, but it's that kind of core solving the problem and that pain and sort of like frustration, and that moment when you solve it, and the kind of relief and elation that comes that you've actually from solving a problem, being creative to solve that problem. I think that's kind of, that is design essentially, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. I was torn between branding and packaging and advertising when I was at uni, because I really enjoyed the psychology behind it all. Like why do people pick up that can of beans over that can of beans? What are they communicating better that is resonating with that person than the other brand? And what can you learn from that, and how can you change that?
So I've done both. So maybe I don't know if you have, Sam.
No, only agency for me.
Not the biggest agency in the world. It was a local design agency, but I guess it's still got to count, surely.
Yeah, they all count. They all
count.
Add to the mix.
Absolutely. I found, this was 10 years ago. I've been in-house for 10 years now, but I found that the pace of going from agency to in-house, the pace was so different. So very, very quick in an agency. I was turning stuff around very, very quickly, getting ideas out the door. I went to in-house and my deadlines for stuff became months. I joined a team at the time that was print focused, and we were very, very slow. It was stuff I could do within a couple of hours. I had 2 months, 3 months to look at. That had to change, to be honest, because the world changed. And also I couldn't have stayed there if it hadn't changed. There's no way at that time you could have gone in-house to external and survived, I believe. I think now we are, the differences, there aren't as many. I think particularly at the Met Office, we very much run like an agency just within the Met Office. The only thing is we've got a variety of projects because we're working on app, website, social. We do stuff for other government organisations as well. But you've always got that thing that you're working within the similar kind of brand, sort of visual brand and visual brand guidelines. The good thing is we're able to define those, so we're able to push and evolve those ourselves. That's all in our power. So we're not being dictated to in that sense. And I also see that as part of the challenge and part of the fun. And I guess being able to then see how, being aware of the business in general and the organisation in general, you're then able to actually apply design thinking to other areas that you never would have imagined, because you can help finance out, because they're actually struggling with a system that they're not quite sure how to use or how to get the best out of, and it's actually a UX problem. And then you might help the management team out because they're trying to work out, they've got all this information about the strategy and what they think is important and what isn't, and you actually come on board to give a different perspective and get some clarity amongst all the confusion. So you begin to see where you can add value in different areas, not just making something look pretty at the end of a chain somewhere along the line. Quite a long answer, sorry.
That's good. So how about you, Sam? You're an agency girl from the outset, so...
Yeah, I think... I would imagine that in-house, you're obviously, you're working on the same kind of ethos the whole time, so you can kind of really get your teeth into it, and it becomes part of, like, the blood flow of the company, really. Whereas in an agency, obviously, you get given a brief, you kind of learn about the background of that company. It is a bit more fast-paced, but it's kind of, I guess, you're kind of jumping on lots of different types of projects and lots of different types of clients and people, and I'm lucky enough to work in a small enough agency that I can see projects from start to finish. So we'll get given the brief by our boss, or maybe chat through on the phone, or like meet the client face to face, run through exactly what it is that they are struggling with, what they want. Then we'll go off in a little team, come up with some concepts, and kind of bounce off of each other. And then if your concepts get chosen, you see that to the end, and then you see your thing on shelf, which is always obviously great. So yeah, I guess it's just different. You're still working on challenging briefs in both scenarios. You're still growing. You're still there to find problems, problem solve, make stuff better, get stuff out there that's really going to hit home with your target audience at the end of the day. So it's such a personal choice. Like, that's why I always say to anyone, like, just do as many placements as you can get. Find Google agencies and creative like businesses and teams around you. Have a look into them and see if they kind of suit your kind of idealism and sound like the kind of place you'd want to work for, and then get in contact with them and see if you can go in and shadow them and see what it's really like to work there as well, because you might get there and you might think, oh, don't want to work here.
Yeah, and don't forget the in-house teams as well. There's going to be loads of companies that have in-house graphic design, web design, marketing teams and stuff like that. Don't discredit those, ask them.
So at the moment I'm setting up a website called TernHeads, and it's to try and bring educators, students and industry together in one place. So it will be basically a website that is kind of exclusive to students, because a lot of portfolio sites out there at the moment, like Behance, the Dots, and various others, obviously there's a lot of professionals on there. So you're kind of uploading your portfolio next to someone who's been doing it for like 10, 20 years or something. It's not the biggest kind of ego boost in the world. We kind of just rely on students emailing us directly at P&W, and obviously we get a bit of an influx around May, June time, when everybody's graduating, and then the rest of the year it can be completely dead. So I just thought it would be quite cool to kind of create something where agencies can kind of go to one platform, and find students from all across the country as well. Talking to Phil, sort of saying about having more industry briefs as well. I don't know if that's something that you guys would want more of, kind of working on live projects with industry. So not only would the students be able to kind of upload their portfolios, the educators can also create their own profile and kind of outline, if you like, a brief template that would fit into their courses, that then industry professionals can fill in and submit, and then they can kind of make collaborations. And I'm just hoping it would kind of open up the UK as a whole as well, rather than just being limited to your immediate area. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I was at uni, and even now when you go on a lot of these kind of industry websites, a lot of the interviews they do are with people who have been in the industry for 40 years, they're CEOs or whatever, and it's not very relatable. So I would like to try and interview people who have, they're 6 months in on a junior role, and how they found it, that time between graduation and the first 6 months of their first job.
I have to disappear in a minute, but I'm going to leave you with something that I think you must do as an action at the end of this meeting, and it's pretty boring, and certainly you probably think it's boring, but I think it's important. And I think if you're not on LinkedIn, you need to get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you might think, is for boring old people, and it probably is, but you can reach anybody that you want. So if you think that you want to try and chat to the former vice president of Coca-Cola, you're probably one connection away from being able to send them a direct message. You'll find that you'll be able to have chats and conversations with people that you never imagined you could, and now's the time to be doing it. So I can't stress enough, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn and start messaging people and making connections.
So Sam,
Yeah.
These guys can contact you, they can follow you. There's Turnheads. They can follow you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll send you the P&W like brochure to have a look through, so you can see the sort of stuff we do. And then feel free to, same as Ross, add me on LinkedIn if you want to. And then we're looking for people to join the launch group for TernHeads. So if you're interested in being part of the launch and sort of testing out the site for me and giving feedback and stuff, that'd be really appreciated. So it's all free. So I'll send it all over anyway, and if you've got any other questions or any kind of queries, then feel free to ping them over.